Hello everybody, welcome to an update video on my door transition rewrite patch. For those of you who don't know, I did do a video on version 1.0 of this patch, so if you want more information, I encourage you to watch that video either before or after this. I'll link it in the description, but I did just want to go over what has changed since the last version. There's been a lot of improvements and fixes, so I'd highly recommend updating if you haven't. If you have the old version, this is pretty much the same patch but better. So I'll go over the boring stuff first. There's been a lot of fixes to issues. So there was a soft lock that Omega Dragnet found. I fixed that. There was a RAM conflict with the custom scrolling sky patch by Amoeba, I believe. I have moved the RAM usage there in hopes that there will no longer be a conflict. And then I've also just fixed lots more scrolling issues with both layer 1 and layer 2. Long story short, the vanilla game does not like it when the camera is out of bounds and it's scrolling. And in vanilla that doesn't happen, because in my patch, when you go through a door transition, let's just say after the screen fades to black, let me just give you a brief explanation of what's happening. So now the new room has loaded. So I like to think of it as we're teleporting into the new room, but we're actually outside of the new room. And we're going to scroll into it from out of bounds. And if you scroll directly into it, like from left to right or from straight up to straight down, that works fine. But scrolling diagonally into it from out of bounds can cause some graphical glitches. But right now, as you can see, we're slightly scrolling diagonally into it. The door tube is moving a little bit up while it moves to the left, which means we're scrolling diagonally. I'm going frame by frame here. It's very subtle. But we are scrolling into the new room. Now you might ask, and I'll do the similar thing on the other side, if we're out of bounds right now, why doesn't it look like it? Well, due to the way that the game loads tiles, basically, it only loads new tiles that scroll in from the edge of the screen, so whatever was already on screen just stays there. So that's essentially why this current screen looks fine even if the camera is positioned out of bounds right now and it's scrolling back in bounds as part of the door transition. So just a little bit of explanation, but long story short, a lot of issues related to that have been fixed. So let's get on to the new stuff. Actually, before that, the same customization from before is still available, so you can still customize how long the door transition takes. So if you want something more similar to how long vanilla takes, you can do that. Excuse me for the loading times here, but if you change this to like 40 hex frames instead of 2C, then it's going to take a lot longer. That's the length of the door transition. Excuse me. So 40 hex frames is approximately the same as vanilla. So as you can see, it's a lot slower. So that has been maintained, but one of the new options is you can change the primary and secondary directions independently with more control over them than what you had before. So right now, I should specify, when I say primary and secondary directions, the primary direction, if I was to go through this door, would be the screen moves. The door tube is going to scroll across the screen from right to left. That's primary direction. But if I come at it from like an angle, like this, the door tube is also going to have to move from the top of the screen-ish down lower to become into the center. That's what I call secondary direction. I also call it alignment. But hopefully that makes sense. Like you go through the door to the right, so the scrolling from right to left is the primary direction, and the scrolling from top to bottom is the secondary direction. Just so you understand the terminology here. So you can customize the duration of those independently. So right now I have it to where secondary scrolling takes exactly half as long as primary scrolling. So as you can see, this door is going to be centered about the middle of the transition because this will be done when this is halfway done, right? But I can make it so they take exactly the same amount of time. You can also just write a number here if you want. So let's look at that. any different here, but if I go through here, it's really not going to be done with either primary or secondary scrolling until the exact same moment in time. I hope that makes sense. If not, I encourage you to play around with it. But that's just another way that you can kind of control the path the door takes on the screen during the scrolling. You used to be able to influence this, but now you can do it with as much granularity as you want. Okay? Next thing is a setting that I like to call two-phase transition. So right now, the way I think about it is it's one phase of scrolling where primary and secondary scrolling happen simultaneously, but I added an option to do two-phase scrolling like vanilla, where first it'll do secondary scrolling, then primary scrolling, just like vanilla. So if we look at this, and excuse me for the fast forward usage, let's see if this door is a better example. I'm not sure if it is. It might be. Is it better if I go in from the top or the bottom? Okay, so first it's going to do secondary, then primary scrolling, just like vanilla. Okay, and just for fun, I added an option for you to do primary scrolling first, then secondary. I don't know why you'd ever want that, but the idea of this patch is to give you as many options as you could ever want so that you can make door transitions any way you want them to look. So again, that's just the idea behind adding all of these options. Another option I added here is the curve. So this is actually the acceleration curve of the door as it's moving across the screen. So this doesn't have to do with necessarily as much the path that the door takes. It's more so to do with how fast the door takes, or how fast the door moves at any given point in time. So right now, these are both set to different ease in, ease out curves. But let's just say I want to make them linear, and I'm hoping that that'll help you visualize the difference. Let's actually just make them simultaneous again. So now there's going to be no acceleration. The door just instantly starts moving, goes to full speed, instantly stops. Does that make sense? There's no acceleration here. It just instantly starts, instantly stops. Let's look at the ease in, ease out one more time. For comparison, as you can see, the door is going to accelerate and then decelerate at the beginning and end of the transition. So that's kind of what this is about. And you can also, if you want it to just ease in, so it's going to start at 0 speed, speed up, but never slow back down at the end. That's what ease in does. Or excuse me, I said it's ease out, which is the opposite. So ease out is it's going to start fast and then slow down. Okay? So ease in is what I described a second ago, where it's going to start slow and then speed up, but then it's going to instantly stop when it reaches the end. Okay, and then that's all the options there. There's actually two different ease in, ease out, because version 1 of the patch used a Bezier ease in, ease out curve. The other one uses quadratic. And I actually by default tend to like the primary to use quadratic and the secondary to use Bezier, but again, fully customizable here. You can mix and match these however you want. So you can set the primary to be linear, secondary to be ease in, ease out, or whatever combination of these you want to do. Okay? I'm hoping that makes sense. The next thing. This one is something that's kind of harder to demonstrate, but there's an option here that you can control what algorithm is used to place Samus after the door transition. So I used to have a new algorithm that would try to smartly figure out where to place her based on where you set the door cap to spawn in the destination room. But I got some feedback that I ultimately agree with, that it's probably best to just do what vanilla does. So there's an option here, which by default is set to just act exactly like vanilla acts. So if you leave this default, you don't have to learn any new strategy for how to play Samus. You just do what you always did and it'll just work. But if you do want extra flexibility, there is some other options here. I'm actually not going to go into detail about them, but just know that that is now consistent with vanilla. So I'm thinking most of you will see that as good news. And just a little fun fact, that actually took some work because the way vanilla works is every frame during the door transition, it adds the speed value, or it adds, so the, okay, let me start over. The distance to door value in the door data is actually a speed to move Samus every frame during the door transition. If that sounds weird, that's because it is. So the reason that that is interesting is because I'm allowing you to customize how long the door transition takes. So that's why I didn't use the vanilla algorithm out of the box, because I can't. Because if you have a different duration here, then the speed value you give the door might have different effects based on the duration. So I actually had to write a new algorithm that's going to basically just figure out where vanilla would have placed Samus. So again, at the end of the day, this is going to act exactly like vanilla, and you don't have to worry about it, but just know that I had to do some work to get there, and that's why it wasn't like this in version 1.0, but we did get there. So there you go. And then the last thing I want to show you is, this is kind of a big thing, but you may or may not like it. So I have this actually disabled by default, and I'll explain why in a minute. But this setting is called async music upload. And I can explain why it's called that. So in vanilla, when you have a door transition that also has a music change, the way it works is, essentially, the old music is going to keep playing throughout the door transition, and then at the very end, the game is going to pause the music. It's going to then load all the music all at once, and it's going to wait until that's done, and then it's going to fade the screen back in, and you can start playing, and the new music will start playing. Okay? But loading music actually takes quite a while, due to the nature of the Super Nintendo hardware. It basically involves the CPU and the SBC audio chip having to synchronize with each other and manually transfer data, byte by byte, essentially. So nothing else can happen while we're loading music. So vanilla normally just freezes the game for multiple frames. It takes multiple frames just to load this music data. So the game is just sitting there for multiple frames, and it's actually noticeable in vanilla. When you have a door transition that loads new music, you can notice it takes longer. After the scrolling is done, it's going to just sit there for like half a second or so, maybe, just loading music. So what this setting does is, essentially, as soon as the screen fades to black, it's going to pause the current music, and it's going to spend any extra time the CPU has during the whole door transition starting to load this music, so that we're not waiting to do it all at the end. Okay? So that means it basically almost eliminates, in my experience, the extra wait time that happens at the end of the door transition. And the only effect the player notices is that the music stops right away. This might be disturbing to you at first, but if you play with it for a few minutes, it might not be as bad as you think. I actually got quite used to it, and I didn't mind it at all. I kind of you could almost make an argument that I kind of like the effect of the music stopping when you go through the door transition. It gives the player an extra moment to wonder what could be on the other side of this door. If you're playing a non-vanilla hack, you have that sense of mystery. You're like, because it kind of signals to the player they're about to see a new area, So it might not be as bad as you think. You might hate it at first, but I will demonstrate what this looks like now. Okay. So as you can see, there's essentially no extra wait after the screen scrolling is done before we can just start playing again. In vanilla, there would be like a half-second wait right there, if not longer, maybe. I don't know exactly how long it takes, but let's just look at that again. Okay, so that's what that does. So I have that off by default, but I do recommend you use it if you are comfortable using it. But the reason it's off by default is because it also requires Total's SPC transfer optimization patch, which I have it linked here where you can download it. It's just another ASM patch you can add to your ROM, and it basically modifies the sound engine to support a faster transfer protocol. So that's part of the reason that this is so fast, is because it's using his faster protocol. But so the code that I wrote to make this happen relies on his faster protocol. It does not work with vanilla. So that's the reason this is off by default, is because if people just don't know that you need his patch or whatever, they can just plug my patch into their hack and everything else will just work and they don't have to worry about it. But if you do want to take advantage of this feature, you'll have to install his patch as well. So again, I personally recommend it. I think it makes the game a better experience, but that's up to you. You're the hack author. Again, this patch is designed to give maximum flexibility. So this update is really all about adding more options. So you can take it or leave it. One other thing I will note is if you turn this off, but you still want to use his patch, you can still do that and it still works. And you probably should do that, honestly. You should probably use his patch no matter what, because it's such an improvement to the game. Even, well, obviously it's subtle. It only affects when you're loading music, but it makes music load significantly faster. So if you turn this setting off but still install his patch, what's going to happen is you go through a door transition. The music will keep playing until the end, until when the screen stops scrolling. Then the music will stop, the game will freeze, it'll load music, and then when it's done loading music, it'll unfreeze, fade back in, and you can play. Same thing as vanilla, but that freeze will be a lot shorter. So basically this patch makes your hack objectively better no matter what. So great work, Total. I have not seen any negative consequences of using this patch so far in my experience, so I do recommend installing that no matter what. But obviously if you turn the setting on, then it's going to be no extra wait time at the cost of a silent door transition. And silence is only affects when there's a music transition, excuse me. So if I go through any other door, I'm trying to think of what the nearest door is. This setting does not affect any other door whatsoever. So all these are going to work exactly like they always have. Music's going to keep playing seamlessly. I'm also using my door cap patch, which is why I'm able to go through these doors without bonking on them. Excuse the terrible gameplay. But as you can see, the music does not stop during any other door transition, just like vanilla. So this setting only affects door transitions that have music transitions, and only ones that have to load new music. So this is actually this is a good example, because this is a transition that just changes to a music track that's always loaded, so it doesn't actually have to load data. So this one still works like vanilla. So even though I last assembled this with this option on, so this option is on right now, but this particular door transition works just like vanilla because it does not have to load new music. Okay. Anyway, I've spent a lot of time on that, so I hope that makes sense. I hope that's clear as to what that does. Another thing I will note is that using this setting does cause the patch to use a bit more, cause it to use more free space and more RAM. The patch will report what free space and RAM is used when you assemble it by default, unless you turn this off. So you can see for yourself, and you can determine for yourself whether or not you personally think it's worth using. But there you go. The only other new setting down here is the black tile. So this is the actual level data for a black tile. You should not have to change this, but if you changed your CRE tiles layout or whatever, you might have to change this. But this has to do with how I fixed being able to see garbage data when the screen is out of bounds and it's scrolling, like I talked about at the beginning of this video. The way this patch works is when it's drawing tiles to the screen, it'll just draw this tile instead of whatever out of bounds garbage data it would have otherwise drawn. This only affects visuals. So if you're doing out of bounds exploration, the collision should not be affected at all. Even though this level data has like a tile type in it, that does not matter to my knowledge, because we just use this to write to the VRAM tile map. We're not actually writing to level data with this. So if that doesn't make sense, just know that as far as I know, this is only a visual change. So, but if you do need to change that for whatever reason, this option is here. So that's really it, guys. But the hope is to continue making this, you know, the de facto way to make door transitions better for everybody. If there's any customization options or that you would really like to see, or any deal breakers in this patch that still exist, I would love to hear them. But I'm hoping that you guys, you know, appreciate this patch. I know not everybody likes modifying the door transition. Some people like it to be, you know, no ease in, ease out, and they like it to take, you know, a long time. I'm not one of those people, but I do genuinely understand the artistic vision. But at the same time, I hope that some people out there do appreciate this patch. Yeah, so if you have any issues, let me know. Been working on this for quite a while. I hope it helps someone. Thank you. I hope you all have a good rest of your day.